Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, Mysterious Voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I found in my travels. Today it is Poetry Thursday, so I wanted to talk about some more poetry of interest from LGBTQA writers, because that is this period of pride. And today's poem is all about memory and ancestry and things of that nature. I am referring to Rememory by Roya Marsh. For those who don't know, Roya Marsh is a Black American writer who seems to have been getting their work published for the past 15 to 20 years. They've written a number of collections of poetry and won awards for their work. They've also written a number of articles that were critical or engaged in activism, particularly recently, talking about the need to protect communities from fascist groups. And I think Roya is a lesbian, although she might use a different term based on what I've seen. But that is why I'm talking about her today. I would love to talk about her outside of this period of pride, but we're highlighting LGBT writers here, and I might highlight more of her work in the future because I really enjoyed reading and talking about this poem and some other poems that I've been reading from her. So definitely a recommendation from me. But without further ado, let's talk about Rememory. I will read it, do a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. Rememory is the sound of me thinking in a language stolen from my ancestors. I can't tell you who the first slave in my family was, but we are the last. Descendants of the sun, rye-skinned and vibrant, wailing to a sailing tomb, we twist creoled tongues, make English a song worth singing. You erase our history and call it freedom, take our flesh and call it fashion, swallow nations and call it humanity. We so savage we let you live. I can't tell you who the first slave in my family was, but we remember the bodies. Our bodies remember. We are their favorite melody, beat into bucket, broken into cardboard-covered concrete, shaken into Harlem. The getting over never begins, but there is always the get down. Our DNA sheet music humming at the bottom of the ocean. So that was Rememory in terms of analysis. There's a fair bit to talk about in this poem. In terms of narrative, there doesn't seem to be a strict narrative of the poem. Rather, it's talking about the body remembering, or remembering things about your genetic past, perhaps the DNA, your ancestors, as well as maybe the physical past. Just sort of highlighting Black culture, and given that Roya is from Harlem, I believe it was, or maybe the Bronx, I forget which one. But given that she's from there, maybe this is part of the memory of her culture, of where maybe her family has lived before, and even going back further, talking a little bit about that. You specifically see the ancestries mentioned, like slavery in particular, because it's repeated in two different verses. The first time it says, I can't tell you who the first slave in my family was, but we are the last. And then in the second verse, they say, I can't tell you who the first slave in my family was, but we remember the bodies. Our bodies remember. And that's sort of what Rememory is, like your brain can remember, but your bodies can also remember the histories, for good or for worse. And so there's a little bit of repetition in this poem, highlighting where the origins, like where your ancestors really came from. And then you see that at the end of the poem as well, where the narrator says, our DNA sheet music humming at the bottom of the ocean. And I think that's a reference to how a lot of slaves jumped over the sides of the boat while it was sailing across the Atlantic, because they knew that they were going to be enslaved. So your options were to go be enslaved, could do a mutiny, which often didn't end well, or just jump off the ship, presumably to your death, because there's not much help that can be done for you in the middle of the ocean. But a lot of people would have rather have taken that than have have taken, enslavement, because that's not ideal. There's a line in the movie Black Panther where the character of Killmonger is dying, and he's saying, like, bury me in the ocean, something about, like, where our ancestors knew it was better to be dead than to be free. I'm butchering that line, but that's essentially what Killmonger is saying, highlighting the legacy of death. It was either slavery, mutiny, or death, violence, and those aren't really good options for you. But that's part of what the poem is. There's also, like, good aspects of culture discussed in this poem, talking about, like, broken into cardboard covered concrete, shaken into Harlem. The getting over never begins, but there is always the get down. And the get down being a lively performance-based gathering of individuals, a very important cultural thing for African and Black Americans in the Bronx and in New York City. It might be other areas too, but I know the Get Down was specifically focused on New York City. So there's good aspects, but this also highlights cultural appropriation, violence against people of the past, and violence against people of the present. It really gets at the sort of memory of people, and understanding where you came from. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Rememory by Roya Marsh. Pretty solid poem. One that really gets me thinking, and I especially like the use of repetition in those first and second verses. So I'm going to put a link to it in the description. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to critique or say something about my review here, I would love to hear from you. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this poet, this poem, or Poetry Thursday if they don't know and they want to join and start talking about more poets and whatnot. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and body remembering travels. Farewell.